So hello everyone, thanks for coming. This is Meet the Artist Nina's session, and we are so grateful to have also with us her co-mentees Bakhyt, Qiana, and also her mentor Yukimi. So Nina's going to share with us her process. She's going to talk about her work, herself. So over to you, Nina.
Thank you, Dorothy. Let me share my screen. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Meet the Mentee, which I guess is me. I'm very happy to be here with you today and to be able to share with you this project that I've been working on with my colleagues Bakhyt and Qiana under the mentorship of Yukimi Annand. And it's been a dream come true. I think that ever since I started following Yukimi, I think in 2015 or 2016, I dreamt of becoming Yukimi, which I've learned is impossible because she is so unique and incredibly beautiful and wonderful. And I can only aspire to be to soak up all of the Yukimi-ness that I was able to capture over the last almost year. And I hope that I can make her proud and that you get to learn a little bit about Yukimi and my group as well. So thank you for joining me this morning. Okay, I want to say a little bit about where I'm from. I was born actually in the Philippines. I was born in Manila and I was raised in a small, teeny tiny little island called Marinduque. I was raised by my maternal grandparents. And then when I was about 8, I flew to the United States to reunite with my mom, and I've lived in Los Angeles for 30 years. And this is all I know. I haven't lived anywhere else aside from Marinduque and also Los Angeles. I don't really know that I would consider myself a full-time calligrapher. Probably my full-time job is a mom. I'm a mom. I'm a single mom to 3 kids. My niece here, her name is Allison. She is 20 years old now. Emily is 12 and my son Miles is 10. And most of the time I think they like each other, and sometimes it's questionable, but they're great. Do you all see my next slide? Okay, there it is. I have always needed a creative outlet. I think even as a kid, I was always doodling. I fell in love with cursive, like almost every kid does when they learn cursive in the 3rd grade, but I just loved it. I just never really did anything with it, but I've always been drawing. I think I've been drawing since I was a kid, but when I was in high school, I met a friend who was really into comic books. He was into, Batman, Marvel stuff. And I borrowed some of those comics, not to read them, but so I could draw them. So I was drawing X-Men stuff. I was really into that, but I don't know any story. I just drew the characters. I don't even know their names. And then the thing is, I've always been known as sort of a dabbler, although I don't call it dabbling, I call it a creative outlet. And so in my final year of university, I actually studied science. I studied biology, so lots of biology and chemistry and math, physics, all those things. And I felt so far away from the art that in my final year of university, I took photography class. It was just a 1 semester thing, but I loved it so much. I loved learning about layout and all these things. And I don't remember anything, but I loved it. And then a year later, I took a watercolor class. I took it at just a community college, and I loved it so much because I could photograph things and then I could paint them, which seems really strange to do, but I don't know, maybe people do that. But so I continued to photograph plants, and I would paint them because I loved that I could capture the details in two different ways. And then after I had kids, I stopped doing art. But my niece at the time, she was crocheting and she taught me how to crochet, and I crocheted a lot. I crocheted stuff mostly just for my kids. My son, he's not so happy about the things that I made for him, but I loved it. And of course, I'm the type of person who, if I learn that there's a crochet, but then there's another way to create fabric using different tools, I'm probably going to want to learn it. So that's just my character, to want to learn how to do these different things. So I also learned how to knit. And then I also stopped working and I became a full-time stay-at-home mom. And I just wanted to tend a little garden in my balcony. So I did that. And then in 2015, this was a major turning point for me because I started reading. And I've always read, I think we always read since school, but I started reading books about creativity and how I can create myself, which was a foreign concept to me because I thought I'm already who I am. But I started reading The Artist's Way, and that really just changed, it just changed the way that I saw myself. And so I want to say that that's when I started reading, and maybe coincidentally that's when I also started to take calligraphy a little bit more seriously than just dabbling. And I also did a little bit of bookbinding, which I hope to get back into later. I never really had any cool jobs before becoming a calligraphy teacher. I've worked odd jobs. I've been a waitress. I've been a receptionist for a dental office. I've worked at a Christmas store, writing on ornaments. Maybe that's my first exposure to lettering. I worked for the Sanrio shop. I used to sell Hello Kitty merchandise, guys. I used to work as a cashier and a florist for a little bit. And every year for the last 7 or 8 years, this lady hires me to work on her Christmas tree. So I'm excited to see her in November to do her Christmas tree. But my main job nowadays is that I'm a calligraphy teacher. And there's a story behind how this happened, but I'm not going to share that right now. That's a long story. So anyway, I teach mostly just traditional scripts. I don't really do a whole lot of contemporary or abstract work. So being a part of this group really just opened me up to so many possibilities. Here are some photos of some of my students. I don't always have pictures, so I think it's taking a while to load. I've taught, well, I hope to continue teaching all over the place. I teach here in Los Angeles, of course. I've taught for the Letters Conference. I've taught for Legacies 3 just last year. I love in-person classes, and I'm looking forward to getting back onto into those again. But I also really love the Zoom classes because here we are. This would not be possible without Zoom. When I'm not teaching or taking care of my children, I enjoy journaling. This is something that's really personal to me. And I believe that it's been really life-changing. It's changed the way that I think. It's changed the way that I view myself and the world. And this is something really special to me. And I'm really excited to share more about this with you tomorrow if you're planning to join the ride along. And I don't really do a whole lot with my calligraphy, but I love writing people's names. And occasionally I will send a snail mail, which I really love. And I love it because I get to do whatever I want, although I cannot address envelopes for other people because I want to do my own thing. I want to do it my way. I don't want to be told who to write to and how it should look. I want to make it my way. So I wouldn't be good in that field. And so while I find contentment in the things that I do, and I feel pretty happy about how much I have done, I always felt that there was still something more. There's got to be more to this than what I'm doing. And I know there is more because I follow Yukimi, I follow Bakhyt and Qiana, and I follow all of you on Instagram, and you're all doing something different from me. And I've always wanted to tap into tap into that because I felt that I was too much of a perfectionist. I could not pull myself out of this box. And so the lovely Dorothy, I was trying to find a picture of you. I'm sorry, this is the one that I found out was most recent. Dorothy, she is so humble. She says that she's a volunteer at the Art of Letters. And to me, I'm like, Dorothy, you are the Art of Letters. You are the structure of the Art of Letters. And what I love about Dorothy is that when she has a vision, oh, this woman will just clear the path, plow this path to make it happen. And she's done this with bringing teachers to Singapore to teach. She hosts these beginner tables at least twice a year, as far as I can tell, maybe even more often, but she's always doing these amazing things. And so she's done created this beautiful program where she's brought mentors and she's paired them with mentees or students. And I think she paired everyone so well. She's kind of got a knack for pairing people. So I was very fortunate to be asked to be a part of Yukimi's group with Bakhyt and Qiana. And I'm going to introduce you now to my awesome group. They're amazing. I cannot even tell you how amazing these wonderful women are. Actually, I'm going to begin to tell you. I'd like to first introduce you to my mentor, Yukimi. She is just an incredible artist. She just has the eye. I can't even describe the eye, but she has it. And she has a lot of experience with not just art, but graphic design. And she's really in tune with herself. She's really down to earth. And she is just so playful at heart. And I see that in her experimentations. And I'm like, oh, I want to be playful too. So she's my hero. I've also had this privilege to work very closely with Bakhyt. I've been following her for a long time. And pretty much everything that Bakhyt posts, I'm like, oh, I'm going to add that to my list of things that I want to do. She's doing brush. Okay, I do brush. Oh, she's doing fine. Oh, she's making books. She's doing this. And my list of things that I want to do because of Bakhyt is really long. Thank you, Bakhyt. It's just been a pleasure getting to know you. And I just love you so much. And then I also had the pleasure of working with and getting to know Qiana. She is just a genius to me. I honestly don't even know how she's able to do some of the things that she's done. I know that her presentation has passed and some of you were not able to watch it, but I really loved getting to know her. And she's very quiet and to herself. And underneath that, surface of the quietness, she's very prolific and she's just so active, more than you could imagine. And so watching her go through this process was just so beautiful and really inspiring. And we met every month almost, sometimes twice a month. We met mostly through Zoom and we shared most of our work on Padlet and we exchanged a few emails here and there, but most of the time we were on Padlet. I wasn't really sure how I was going to be a part of this mentorship program because I had so many things going on. Like I said, I'm a teacher, so I'm teaching almost every month. This is how I support my family. And when I'm not teaching, I'm conducting meetups. I love meeting people. I love gathering people. Smit on Paper in Monrovia has been so kind and is allowing us to return to their shop every 2 or 3 months to meet. And we're meeting again in October, in case you're in LA. But I'm just always teaching and I just didn't know how I was going to fit this in, but I knew that I couldn't miss this opportunity to learn from Yukimi and to work with Bakhyt and Qiana. So now I'm going to show you the phases of my journey. Starting with phase 1, finding a theme and looking for an inspiration. Our original theme was sustainability, creating things that were, well, we didn't really go down that path. We actually ended up with choosing wearable calligraphy and calligraphic textures. And as I was telling in Kiana's talk yesterday, that I had a very limited view of what something wearable was. I really thought it was a shirt and jeans and shoes, maybe a hat and a scarf, and like that was it. And then when Kiana and Yukimi were starting to share some of their ideas for wearables, they were posting things like umbrellas and purses and earrings. And I never really thought of those as wearables, although they are. So I learned so much already just from the beginning, including what a wearable actually is. One of our first assignments was to gather inspiration. And I was inspired by, I'm constantly inspired by so many things. I think at some point I should probably keep track of all the things, but then I would have a long list every single day. But these are the 5 main people that I was really inspired by in the very beginning. Mark Poulier and Marie Fredrickson, Chris Kenny. I just love this thing. This is so my thing. I love that she could find images and twigs. We have Elizabeth Coulwanier and Daria. I don't know Daria's last name, but anyway, I really like the work of these people. I didn't know what I was going to do with this, but these are the images that I wanted to pull from. I've always loved nature also. And I felt this very strongly when I was working with this project, because it's almost like I take nature for granted. I love nature, but I didn't really think that I had this special connection to it until I started working on this project. And maybe growing up in a little island where there's really very little technology at the time, maybe that's why, because that's all you have is nature. So here we have a desert ground, we have an amethyst, we have water, spider webs, even seed pods, smoke, and branches. Those were things that that inspired me. The second phase of our journey, and when I say phase 1, phase 2, it wasn't like, okay, phase 1 is over, moving on to phase 2. It was, these were all overlapping, and sometimes we would go back and find more inspiration while we were developing things. So there's a lot of overlapping between the phases. Initially, okay, this is your cue to laugh. Initially, I was inspired by this, thank you for laughing. I was inspired by this crackling mud or clay or desert ground. I really loved that look. Or maybe it was from all that drawing of the Marvel characters. Maybe somehow the thing character stayed in my mind, and my first early developments was to work with this. And the quote that I chose was a quote from Rumi. It says, "Maybe we are searching among the branches for what only appears in the roots." And I thought that this was a great way, because these kind of look like roots. And sadly, I abandoned this quote early on, only because I just didn't really know what to do with it. Didn't know if I was going anywhere with this, but that was the quote that I chose. And again, you're cute to laugh again. Maybe there was a subconscious Marvel theme going on, because in the end, I chose to work with spider webs. And I was looking through my photos, looking for pictures of my kids with the crocheted things, and I was scrolling down, and I actually used to take photos of spider webs, which I had forgotten. So I have photographs from 2011 of spider webs. And I think at the time I thought I was crazy. People thought I was crazy, but it seems that there's a connection to spider webs from long ago. So after choosing this spider web, I needed to create I needed to develop the letters. And I can't honestly take all the credit or any much credit for my letters, because really the spiders did all the work. I just looked at the webs and it's like finding Waldo, but finding letters. And it was really fun, really easy. And my son was even helping me with some. He's like, Mommy, look, there's a bee or something like that. And so yeah, that was a really fun thing to do. And once I started to sketch some of the letters, I began to create a more final exemplar. And I knew from the beginning that I wanted to work with capitals. So some of these letters were based on Roman capitals, some are uncial, and some are even Visigothic styles. And here is my final exemplar based on the spiderwebs. And I call them spiderweb capitals. My second letter forms were inspired by a variety of things. It started actually with Spencerian. And I've always just been intrigued by the Japanese culture. I think at one point I was turning Japanese. I don't know. I even took a Japanese language class, which I know nothing. I don't remember anything. I think I remember how to ask, where's the toilet? And that's about it. But I really loved the writing part, which I don't remember anything, but I was in a taiko group. I was doing the drums. I did taiko. I also did Aikido for 6 years. So I was really into the Japanese culture. And so, and up to now, I'm still really into the culture, although not as much as before. But now that I'm into calligraphy, now I'm into Japanese calligraphy and Chinese calligraphy, and working with Bakhyt and Yukimi and Qiana, they're all into brush. And I'm like, I need to get on the brush train because I am missing out. I teach Spencerian, and so naturally I'm exposed to signature writing, which is something I learned first from Michael Saul. And I really loved that when you're writing a signature, or at least in some of these signatures, one stroke flows to the next stroke, and sometimes you make this whole body of text in 1 or 2 strokes. And I have always loved that. Later on, my styles would be influenced by 16th century Gothic cursive, and at the very final stage, smoke. So in November, which was around our first or second meeting, I already wanted to write in a Spencerian style, and I already had this idea to write vertically. And I was like, well, that was easy. I'm done. I developed my letters, and I I was ready to pat myself in the shoulder, and I was like, well, this mentorship is finished. Thank you very much, Yukimi. And then she said, oh, but we need to develop the letters. And I was like, I don't know what that means. And so I went back to the Spencerian here at the very top, and I just wrote it very quickly in my sketchbook, and I was trying to figure out how does this become the vertical cursive? And so I wrote it upright, and then I wrote it with a back slant. And then if you write with a back slant and you turn your paper 90 degrees, it looks like you wrote it vertically. So I was like, well, Yukimi, I'm done. That was great. I've developed my style. It's all good. But I was wrong. There are many more steps than that. And around April-ish or so, I was starting to study Gothic cursive because I was going to teach Gothic cursive. It didn't work out, but that's okay because it's going to be for a different year. I think I knew that I wasn't ready anyway. But as I was studying Gothic cursive, I really loved the flamboyant ascenders and descenders. And I thought, oh, I could do that with my cursive. I could add that to my Spencerian. So if you go up to the slide, you can see that these are just very vertical. There's really very little overlapping of the forms. And then here I developed these more whimsical, more wide ascenders based on these flourishes from Gothic cursive. And the final ingredient to my form was the idea of smoke. And what I like about, or what I derive from smoke is the direction of smoke that's kind of just changing all the time. I think even in a still room where there's really no airflow, smoke doesn't go up. It goes this way and that way, and it's going left and right and up and down, and it's just doing all of these crazy things that we take, I take for granted. And so I don't even remember how I got this idea, but I wanted to add movement to my vertical cursive. And so I ended up with something like smoke cursive. Thank you, Shahada. And for this, I didn't have an exemplar because it's more free. You just kind of follow your arm to do what it wants to do. And the third phase, again, this doesn't mean that the first or second phase ended, but the third phase was working on things. And I used, I think, minimal materials. I started with a few things for experimentation, but in the end, I just really worked with a few tools. So I worked with tote bags. I had a sketch pad, pencils, and well, you see the list right here. And I also brought out an old sewing machine that I had in college. I wanted to sew at one point. Never happened. I never actually learned anything, but I had a sewing machine. So I brought it out and I was trying very hard to learn or relearn how to sew. And that ended up being a whole other world. And I was like, forget it. I'm just going to sew straight lines because that's what I can do. Because my initial idea was to sew a dress. I worked on 3 projects, although I didn't know what these 3 projects were at the time. I worked on a scarf, a tote, and earrings. But again, just imagine that I had no real idea about some of them until I started a bit later on in the process. So our first assignment was to get a large piece of fabric and experiment and do things. And Bakhyt and Qiana did some beautiful work on theirs, and Yukimi did as well. And for me, I wanted to get on the brush train. So I was like, I'm gonna bring out a brush, and it wasn't so good. So I was like, oh, this is so ugly. What do I do with this? So I thought I'm gonna cut it up and we're gonna, I don't know, do something with it. And I started sewing things and I had ideas and I started cutting. And then at the end, it was a flop, and I don't want to talk about that anymore. So I moved on to our second project, which was to create a scarf. And I thought, okay, this is more doable. I think let me start all over. This time I'm gonna play it a little bit more safe and just work with my form. And at this point, I had already started to develop my form, so I wasn't really just playing anymore. I was starting to actually do the work. And here you see my sketch. And here it required a lot of layers to do because if you applied the paint too thick, it becomes stiff. And so I had to water it down to keep it pliable, I guess. But that meant it required a lot of going over and over again to make the lines look more opaque. And after I did that, Yukimi suggested to create another scarf, but maybe with thinner lines this time. So she suggested that I use a fine liner applicator, and she demonstrated for me how she was using it using a ruler. And that was really helpful because I would have never thought to use a fine liner. I didn't even know there was such a thing. So thank you, Yukimi. So I did the same exact design, but instead of using a brush, I used a fine liner applicator. And then I also worked on tote bags. I bought a lot thinking I'm gonna have so many bags. But in the end, I only wrote on 2 because one, I was pressed for time, and 2, I was just so afraid of writing on these. You guys, writing on these is like pulling my own teeth. I was like, Nita, you need to write on these. And it was really hard because I was so afraid that it wasn't going to be good, and it was just sucking so bad, and my lines were messy. It was just, can't even imagine the talk that I had with myself. But I really enjoyed these experimentations and being able to incorporate smoke and spider webs in one of them. And then this one, this was actually inspired by one of Bakhyt's work. She was working with capitals that were on a baseline and a capital line. And it also reminded me of some stone walls from Qiana's thing. And also when I went to go visit my friend in Portland, I saw a stone wall. So I really liked this idea. And in the end, there was like spider webs on a window pane. Okay, this final tote bag actually came at the last minute. Actually was inspired to rework a quote, and I went back to my roots quote, the Rumi quote, and I just had this burst of inspiration to write it. And I wasn't sure if it was going to be any good, but I just went with the flow. I didn't really expect it to be great. And it's not really that, I feel like there's still so much more that I could do with this, but this is what came out. And I got it screen printed at a local shop. And the third item that I worked on was earrings, and I was inspired to make earrings, I guess maybe early on from Qiana's pointing out all these different jewelries and different things that you could do with wearables. But it didn't quite strike me until I was out for a walk and I was walking under a pergola, and there were these seed pods, wisteria seed pods hanging, and I thought, I love hanging earrings. And so I thought, I want to make hanging earrings. And so I went back to my earlier inspirations. The first design that I wrote says love, and I used my spider capitals. And it's probably unusual to see the word love in such a rigid, kind of masculine way. And I think that's what I really loved about it. It wasn't this beautiful flourishy love, Valentine's Day kind of thing, but it was like a different kind of love. And I really love this technique that I learned from Andrea Wunderlich, which was, this is tracing paper, and you basically retrace over and over until you get the right design. And it's funny because when I was taking her class, I love Andrea, and I think whatever class she teaches, I will take it. Tough love, yes, OJ. I will take any class that she will teach. And when I took this class, I was like, oh, I'm probably never going to use this ever in my life. And I was wrong. I'm so glad that I took this class because I was able to use Andrea's technique for designing a thing. And the next step was, okay, what are we going to make these things out of? Am I going to make them out of clay? Am I going to use wires and fold them? I really had no idea. But in one of the meetups that I had, I was at Smitten on Paper. And guess what is at Smitten on Paper? They have laser cutting machines. And Mr. Fox, he's also at Smitten on Paper. So Mr. Fox of Fox and Quills. And he knows how to use the laser cutting machine. So it was like just waiting for me to use it. And I'm really thankful for Mr. Fox and for Smitten on Paper for helping me with the creation of this project. And I made a lot, but because of the material that I used, it's basswood. It's really light and also very delicate. So you can't apply pressure to it because otherwise it will break. So a lot of these broke as we were removing them or as I was creating earrings out of them. So here, I think it's too slow, but it's just a video of laser cutting. The next set of earrings that I worked on was using my other style of lettering, the smoke cursive. And the original text was creative life, or create life, or something, a life that's creative. And it's from Chilton Pierce's quote, "To live a creative life, we must lose our fear of being wrong." And I just love that text so much. And again, like I said, I kind of abandoned the quote, my quote, a long time ago, and I just worked with single words. So I really love the word create. And I was already using the word create in my tote bags, but I felt like I could still reuse some of that material. And so I used it here. And I just jumped out of bed one day and I had this idea to make an earring out of this word. And it started out like this. And then I started to extract certain parts of my little chicken scratch over here. And I began to just slowly refine it. And again, doing Andrea's technique of resketching and redrawing, making parts wider and just stepping back, zooming in, and all of these work, all of this sketch. And I spent a lot of time in my notebook sketching. I felt like that was really what I was comfortable with. And that's probably due to all the years of drawing in my life. But I was most comfortable with a pencil and paper. And more of Andrea's teaching. And Yukimi actually helped me to vectorize, even though I struggled so much with it. And I felt that I needed to go back to the sketch to really get my sketch in order so that I would have an easier time vectorizing. So I think I actually did very little vectorizing. I just pushed some vector buttons and tweaked a few things and ended up with some passable vectors. I'm sure I will need to go back and learn some Illustrator at some point and really, really learn how to do this work. And laser cuts, not everything works out. We had a lot of flops. Some of the vectors that I did, for whatever reason, just didn't work out. It only engraved or etched the wood. It didn't actually cut it. So there's a lot of going back and forth. And I brought my laptop to submit on paper and I was sweating it because I was like, okay, we're going to be here for a few hours. And we were there all day cutting and tweaking. And I'm not computer savvy. So can you imagine me trying to figure out Illustrator was just a lot for somebody who didn't have that experience. So we cut a lot, but again, because of the material, not every single one made it out alive. So throughout this whole process, Yukimi was there every step of the way. We communicated mostly on Padlet, and I would post things on there. Qiana would post things, Bakhyt would post things, and Yukimi would share her immediate feedback on what she thought was going well, what could be improved. And she would offer so many suggestions, but never in a, hey, you need to do this, but more of a, hey, I think this would look good. What do you think? Or, hey, wait, I think you could go in this direction. How do you feel about it? So she was constantly checking in with us to see how we felt about going in the new direction or trying new things. And whether we took her suggestions or not, she was happy either way. She wasn't forceful or hurt that we didn't do a thing, or she was always more than happy to help. And she just has a special eye, and I think it's part innate and she's just born that way, but also she just has this vast experience that she can put into her work, and she's been doing this for 20 plus years. And so I'm here, I'm so new compared to that, and I'm so inspired by the level of work that Yukimi produces and by the level of work that my colleagues were able to produce. I know that for me, as I close this chapter, it's just the beginning of a new one. So Yukimi was always sharing if I posted something about Japanese calligraphy, then she would say, oh, check this out. Or I'm like, oh, I'm thinking of doing some Gothic letters. She's like, oh, what about this? And so I felt really supported in my ideas because she was always backing them up with ideas or her ideas of her own. And the final phase is the final pieces. This is the end result of my scarf. It says nullius in verba, which means take no one's word for it. It basically means to go see for yourself. I can tell you all I want about how delicious this coffee is, but you need to go taste it for yourself in order to really truly experience the flavors, the smell, the texture, all of those things. And same goes for any art. And this really resonates with me. I have it I wrote this and I taped it onto my wall and I see it every day. And for me, this is probably, if I ever get a tattoo, which I probably never will because I'm too scared, but it would probably be Nullius in Verba. And I was really fortunate to know Lily Ivering and my friend Isabella, who were happy to take photos for me and to model my items. My second project was the tote bags. I only made 3. 2 were handmade, hand painted. This one here, this one says be yourself. And this one here says create. And this one here is my Rumi quote. And I took that Rumi quote at the very last minute. And Qiana was so delightful in helping me and Bakhyt with these mock-ups. And I'm just so glad to have had her help here. And I didn't know what she was going to make of them, but I really loved what she did. And I'm particularly drawn to this one here. So thank you, Qiana. And then I had an earring series, I guess. And this is my love earrings. And I really liked the different color of the face of the earrings and the sides of the earrings here. I thought that worked out really well because it just highlights the face of the earring really nicely. And this is my create earrings. I made 2. One was very thin and fine, and this is sort of the second. This was actually the second design, but this, because it's thicker. So the original design is thin like this. You can see it's very thin here. And here it's a little bit thicker, which made it more sturdy and less fragile. So, and my model is so beautiful. There we go. And finally, I was able to create titanium steel jewelry thanks to Qiana, who had herself ordered some and she tested them. And she's like, guys, it's good. It's pretty good quality. Do you want me to order any for you? And I said, yes, let's do it. So thank you so much, Qiana. These will be shipped over to Dorothy and she will handle the shipping for these. So thank you so much, Dorothy, for taking care of this. And I actually sent Qiana 2 other designs, but they just did not really work out. So I'm only selling these ones. And I would like to conclude my presentation with some reflections and lessons and reminders. First lesson and reminder is that not everything we think in our brains and write on the paper is going to be successful. You'll have a lot of trial and error, and maybe if you create 10 things or have 10 ideas, maybe just 1 or 2 of those ideas will be good, but there's ideas are never really wasted. It's not like we have a trash can in our brain, and although sometimes I feel like we need one, but it's not like those things are discarded. They're just put behind somewhere, and then later they'll pop up in an unsuspected ways, and they kind of just all build up upon each other. So no idea is ever wasted, and maybe this was a good thing for me because I was so comfortable in my notebook and not realizing that I was pulling these different ideas to create one thing. It was all in there. Lesson 2, reminder number 2 is progress takes time. I was telling you that I had this naive beginning where I thought I wrote something, I'm done. Thank you for this mentorship, Yukimi. It was nice to meet you. Bakhyt and Qiana, see you later. But I was wrong. There was just so much more to this creative process. And I think I was so stumped in the beginning because I was trying to keep it Spencerian. I wasn't allowing it to be something else. I wanted to keep it Spencerian because that's what I know. You know, I wanted to do something that we always want to do something that we're already good at or that we already know. And this mentorship program really just pulled me out of that gently. And they're like, hey, you know, you need to do more, do a little bit more. And so it takes a lot of time to get from here to the final product. So be patient, and just sometimes in the beginning, you don't even know what you're doing, and that's okay. Apparently, that's part of the process, is not knowing what in the world you're doing. It's just part of it. Great reminder. Third lesson and reminder is to give yourself permission to create, because you never know who you're inspiring to create. These are my kids. This is my daughter and my son and my niece. And then these two here are my other nieces and nephews. And I watch them twice a week. So I'm also a part of their life, and they see me writing, they see me painting, they see me doing things and creating art. And my daughter, you know, if I'm journaling, she wants to journal. We go outside, I want to start journaling, she brings out her little notebook. Here in this picture, I took a folded pen class with Yukimi Annand, and my son was taking the class with me. Here I was taking a class with Gemma Black, and my daughter was also painting with me. My son was also doing monoline italic with me. My daughter was binding her first book with me. My niece was engraving her first thing with me, and she also draws and she paints. And during the pandemic, she was selling her artwork. I'm like, I've never even sold my artwork, and she's selling boxes full of artwork. And I was just really inspired by her tenacity, and inspired by my kids. And finally, my daughter wanted to create her own earrings. So she folded some origami and created her own earrings. And I thought, you just don't know that what you're doing is making ripples in unexpected ways. And for me, I learned how to draw because my grandpa was drawing, and that's how it started for me. And so this is a really important thing for me to continue to watch myself, but to allow myself to be myself, because that gives my children permission to also be themselves. And a great reminder is that no man is an island. And if we are islands, then we are islands in the sea, separated on the surface, but connected in the deep. And I was very fortunate. The dates here do not correspond to when I actually first met them, but when the picture was taken. And I first met Dr. Vitolo online in 2015. He reached out to me after an Instagram posting and asked me if he could critique my work. And I said, oh my gosh, fangirling over Dr. Joe. And what Dr. Joe Vitolo did for me was he helped me to see my forms. He taught me how to critique my work, which was really a really important skill for any calligrapher. And if not for Dr. Vitolo, I think that I would overlook so many details. And I felt that because he taught me how to see, I can teach my students how to see as well. And that's always what I strive to do. In 2017, or maybe 2016, maybe 17, I asked Michael Saul if he could be my mentor. And he said, only if you are serious. And I was afraid. I was afraid because I didn't know if I was serious. And my friend Arlene was with me at the time, and she was like, there is nobody more serious than Nina. You need to take her on. And I wish that I was able to keep in touch with Mike more over the years, but things just got crazy real fast. And I hope that he and I can reconnect really soon. But he's been a major influence in my life because I showed him my standard work, and he was like, oh, this is, it's textbook. And I thought that was a compliment, that my work was textbook, that it was something that you could find in a textbook. But he wanted me to put myself into my writing. He said, Nina, anybody can copy. Copying is easy. It's creating work that is uniquely your own. That's the whole point. And he taught me that. In 2017, I took a facture class with Giovanni, and I just loved him so much that I took a cancelleresca class with him in Italy in 2018. And it was a week-long class. And I just loved Giovanni's. What I learned from Giovanni is that you need to have a strong foundation, because everything that you do that's uniquely your own, like Michael Saul was saying, is based on these very timeless classical rules, structures. It's not like we just pull these letters from thin air. These are based on Roman capitals or uncial or whatever, I learned that from him. And from Todd, I took a speedball class with him in 2017, and he was doing crazy stuff with them that I didn't even know you were allowed to do with a pen. So I learned again from Todd to break out of these canonical forms and to sort of explore different ways of moving your pen. I was so afraid of that. And finally, my dear mentor, Yukimi, I've met her in 2017 when I met Dr. Vitolo. She and I both met Dr. Vitolo at the same time. And I've taken Yukimi's foundational class, and I've taken her folded pen class and her built up capitals class. And I don't know, Yukimi, I hope you're not tired of me yet, because I'm going to be your student forever. So hope you're here for the long run. Thank you so much for your kind and gentle guidance and your support, and for believing that there was something in me that was, and to you too, Dorothy, for believing that there was something dormant in me that could be nurtured out. So thank you. And this just goes back to the whole no man is an island. I think really great, amazing things happen when we get together. We also need to retreat and do our own thing. And then when we come together, we have a new energy, and we can create things like this mentorship program. We can create conventions, we can create classes, we can teach a new generation of calligraphers. And this is exactly what this mentorship program has been. So, and this experience to me has been much more than a mentorship. It's been a development of friendship. It's for people with unique experiences coming together and meshing together, and then separating to work alone, and then coming back together and working things out, and then retreating and doing our own thing. So there's a lot of individual work that we did, and we would always meet back at the circle and just help each other and pull and retreat and do our own thing. And I love that so much, because as much as I love direction, as much as I love instruction, I think I'm a rebel at heart. And I want to do things my way, even if it's the same way as the way that you're doing it. I want to come to the conclusion on my own. I want to see it for myself. And I am that type of person. So I really loved how we worked together as a group and how we came together and how we just separate and come back together and separate and come back together. And it was just really a beautiful symbiosis. And so what is next for me? I hope to continue teaching, and I hope to continue learning and meeting other calligraphers and learning with them and learning from them. I'm going to take up the brush because of Bakhyt and Qiana and Yukimi. I'm going to join the brush club. I'd also like to learn more Adobe stuff. I really need to. I feel like in order to survive in this new, with technology, I need to keep up. And I would also like to continue fine-tuning my inner compass. There's a story about how a mentor or a teacher is like a person who offers you directions in a map. And the mentor can say, okay, if you go straight and then make a left at the corner, and then when you hit the gas station, make a right, and by the tree, you make 5 steps backward and do a hop and step. They can tell you all these directions, but we have to realize too that those mentors and teachers are showing you their own map of their own experiences, and who knows that if you start on that journey, you might encounter maybe the gas station's gone, maybe it's now a plaza, maybe that tree is not there anymore. The landscapes of the maps change, and different people will put different things on their map. Maybe a tree is important, so that they'll include that. And maybe for somebody, a rock is something that's important to them. And so different people will have different maps to show you. And that's great because it offers you a wider perspective of what's out there. But inside, we have our own inner compass, and we need to listen to that and figure out our own path. So here's, and I just thought that's your cue to laugh, by the way, in case you missed it. And that's all. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Nina.
Thank you.
That was an awesome presentation. That is so cool. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me.
Wonderful. Does anybody have questions for Nina or comments? Amazing presentation, Bernice says.
Thank you, Bernice.
Thank you. A lot of thank yous.
Thank you, guys. It's been an incredible experience. And from the beginning, I did not know what it really meant to be mentored. And I think we're so lucky to have been able to spend this much time with Yukimi. And, after I was done fangirling, because I was fangirling for a long time, I was like, okay, you can get to work now because, but it's just been an incredible journey. And I think even as I was putting these slides together, I felt like there was still so much more that I could put and talk about. But thank you for joining.
Does Yukimi want to comment?
Okay, thank you so much, Nina. Yes, it's just so much right now. Yes, and time is a little up, but yes. Okay. From the beginning, I was wondering how Nina works because I knew her only met 2 or 3 times, and also from teaching and her post, and she has very strong basics, and she seems like she can continue those structure, paying attention, everything to be kind of perfect to do. And how this person's interested in my work and what she wants to do was my question in the beginning. But she was very quiet until we really meet between the time, and not much posting sometime. And then, oh, what she's doing? I know she was very busy teaching. But when we meet, and then finally she said, okay, I'm going to share my sketch. It blew me up because she knew what to do more than she knew, I guess, and I knew. And even her sketches, everything, she paid attention to the details. So sketch its own was beautiful art. And then we grew up together to work together, and I got, so my image of Nina changed a lot. She has 2 or 3 characters in her body or mind, and sometimes very quiet, but seems like she has so much in it, and then very strong. And I really look forward to seeing what Nina will go forward with her really great basic skill to the direction of more free and creative way. But I'm sure she will do it, and then I think she'll keep both. But I'm sorry, my brain is, I got 3 mentees presentation, and I got a little too much. But yeah, yes, it was big pleasure to work with Nina. Yeah, so she surprised me a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Yukimi. Thank you. Yeah,
Thank
I think at the beginning, when I asked Nina whether she would like to join the mentorship program, it was that what Nina also said, that after, I mean, where does all that calligraphy skills and knowledge go from there, and how does the art background, how can it be melded together with all that skills in calligraphy? And I think that exploration process, is needed, and it's very long. Yeah, so I'm just so thankful, Nina, that you took the challenge and that you jumped on board with this idea. Yeah, I'm just so excited to see process. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm going to stop the recording because it's the hour. So let me just do that.